That's great.
Welcome to our first episode of OnlyFans.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, surprise.
Yeah. You guys got an interesting dungeon here for OnlyFans.
Oh, are we recording right now? Oh, this is, we're recording. Okay, well, we're going live with it right now. Well, welcome to the Howard Show. I think this is actually episode 10, I'm pretty sure. Got my boy here, Tyler Jarvis, super successful restaurant entrepreneur. I guess that'd probably be the right word for you since you have multiple restaurants. And this is the very first episode where we have, I guess, high-tech equipment. We got cameras, same microphones, we got lights, we got some new decorations up that you can't see. We'll zoom out later on.
That's great.
But Tyler, thank you for agreeing to come on the show. You came in on it last time when it was just a cell phone.
I did.
And wasn't very pretty, but I'm glad we got this all set up and have you as the first guest on.
Man, I appreciate you having me, John. And look, the knowledge was still just flowing, even though it was just on the cell phone. So I was glad to catch the back end of it. So.
Oh, good. So you did watch all the episodes,
of course,
previously.
Yeah.
I like it. So I guess we'll go back in time to 2017 when I first met Tyler here. Tyler had just opened, I think it was your third restaurant.
It was.
It was Cuvée Destin.
Yep.
Or Cuvée Kitchen and Wine Bar.
That's it.
Cuvée Kitchen and Wine Bar. I was in my last year of the military, and I was heavy into remodeling, new to real estate, and I always came in Cuvée a little dirty, late at night.
That's right.
So I was living on Scenic Highway 98, a place called Terracotta.
Mm-hmm.
I was remodeling 2 condos in Holiday Owl. Whenever I'd get done, I'd always stop by your place to get usually a really good cheeseburger that you made, or the flatbreads. Yep. And maybe I had a little drywall dust in my hair at times, and you were always sitting over on the one of the tables, I think doing accounting or menus or whatever. And I think one night it was very slow. You just came up to me and you said something like, "Hey man, like, what do you do for a living?" or something like that. And I think you may have said, maybe, I don't know if you said it or not, you're like, you seem like you're always like a little dirty. Maybe you said it in a very nice way. You got a little dust in your hair or something like that. And I was like, oh, I'm in the military, but doing remodels. And then we just kind of hit it off from there. And that's where our friendship started. And then actually, I want to say it was that night. I was like, hey, can you take the mac and cheese and put it on top of the burger? And then you went back there and did, like, you have to explain this, but I think you, like, nitro freeze the macaroni or something like that, and then fried it and then put it on the burger as like a patty. Explain what you did.
Yeah, so first off, man, it was always a pleasure to meet people that have been through the things that you've been through. And when I see that dust in your hair, and we don't typically allow sleeveless shirts in that restaurant at the time, but when you see guns like those, you just have to respect them. But no, we John and his awesome wife Riz, and usually a couple people here and there they drag in with them. They'd always come in closer to close. So as a restaurateur and a restaurant team, you always wonder, why are these people waiting to come in so late to have dinner? And typically the people that do that is because they're busy and they've got things going on. So I've always had a respect for every guest that comes in the restaurant. But if you come in dirty because you're trying to accomplish something, and you're coming into a restaurant that late, chances are you're really hungry, which means it's time to feed that hunger. So
I was.
John, he loves to eat, and we had a wood fire grill over at Cuvée that was that we cooked with white oak, and all the flavors coming off that grill were awesome. But he's a sucker for a good burger. But whenever he would get it, he always loved the truffle mac and cheese also. So he wanted that truffle mac and cheese on the burger, man. So we had to hook it up. But yeah, the only way to do that quickly was to put it in our blast chiller, get it cold enough that we could actually fry it without it falling apart. And that's what we did that day. A little bit of panko, fried up the truffle mac and cheese.
So good.
Did the burger, shaved all kinds of Parmesan Reggiano on top afterwards. And
was it a bacon
tomato
jam? Tomato jam.
Tomato jam.
Tomato jam.
Yeah, that we threw on that thing. And
I'm telling you that.
it was pretty big. That was a big burger, man, but you took care of it.
Yeah, you couldn't really it was hard to eat it because it was so tall. that mac and cheese patty, I want to say it was probably like
it gets thick
tall.
when you put it in that panko and then you deep fry.
So good. So good. So that's kind of how our journey started. And then we would just chat more and more about what I was doing because at this time I was unknown in real estate.
Yeah. Just starting, really, right?
Yeah, that was in 17. I mean, I got my license June of 17. I was only a year of experience into vacation rentals, doing my own personal ones only, trying to juggle all that while still being active duty. So I was very unknown at the time in real estate. And then, yeah, always going to Cuvée because it really was the best place to go, especially like later at night. And the old fashions were amazing. And then let's see, where did it go from there? It wasn't that long after that I actually left for law school because I went to law school in 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then at that point, we were pretty good friends. We were golfing a little bit. You were trying to teach me how to golf. And
from a guy that was a 20 handicap.
Yeah. I was pretty awful. Much better now, much better. And then we went to Napa, and I think that's what really kind of brought us a lot more.
Yeah.
I was a second option to go to Napa because Gary couldn't make it.
You were, but look, you're second option to the mayor.
Yeah, that's right.
You know what I mean?
That's right.
So
and that's
not a bad second option.
And that was such a fun trip. I'm telling anybody, if you're ever going to go to Napa with this guy.
Yeah.
Like, it is the coolest experience. You'll never get that experience unless you go there with someone in the restaurant industry.
Oh, yeah.
Which is a great point. So Cuvée was your third restaurant, right?
Mm-hmm.
You got 3 restaurants in Destin.
We do.
East Pass, Shrimp and Oyster House, Jack Acuta's, and Bertula's.
Yeah.
And I guess actually Jack Acuta's was the first one, but it was where East Pass was.
Correct.
On the harbor. When did you open up that restaurant?
So so my business partner Chris Regan and I, we own the Bald and the Beard Restaurant Group.
Mm-hmm.
That was formed after we had the 3 restaurants. So we started off as just a single restaurant, 2 owners, trying to live the dream in entrepreneurship. Had been working for other people for a while, opening up brands and doing things for them. Decided to do it on our own. As we were having a lot of success for other owners, and it's kind of traditional story of how people get going in America, really, back in the day. You learn some skills and then you try to apply them to, better yourself and your family and everybody else, right? So we opened up Jack Acuta's in 2014. It was located on the Destin Harbor at Harbor Walk Village. 285-seat seafood and sushi restaurant. A lot of, at the time, craft cocktails in our market were really just starting to take off. So we had liquor infusions, we had sake cocktails, and a lot of things that were new to Destin at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But my partner and I like to travel, and these were things that were starting to happen in a lot of other cities and markets in the country. And we were just super excited to share them with people. So 2014, opened up our first restaurant, got that thing up and running. And we had some clients of ours who were basically some board members of a property right down the street where Bertula's is now located. They used to come to the restaurant all the time, family friends of my dad in the fishing business, and they said, hey, we got another location that's got a 20 or 30-year lease that was ending.
Oh.
And they were like, you guys interested in opening a second restaurant? Well, at the time, we weren't even 1 full year into our first restaurant. And, we obviously had goals and aspirations to have a restaurant group and a company, but there was never, let's open one restaurant and open a second one within, 12 to 16 months. It was more open one, get it up and operating profitable, and look to get the second one going sometime in like year 3. Mm-hmm. And then that way year 4, by year 5, you've got 2 units, both profitable, and then you can kind of begin to scale and things like that. But I remember sitting on the couch asking my dad, like, hey, what do you think? At this time we're $600,000 in debt for the business. Got very little income because you're just trying to make everything work, and all the money you're making you're putting back into the business. And I said, man, we got a really good opportunity. This is a location that's been occupied in Destin for almost as long as I've been alive, and it's open. What do you think? And he goes, well, if you think you're really good at what you do it. and just figure it out. He goes, if it doesn't work, you're $1 million in debt. You go bankrupt. You go get a job at a hotel or a restaurant. You're running another company, and eventually you pay it off. What's so scary about it? And I was like, that's okay. I don't know. I had a young, my son was just being born, so I had a 2-year-old. I'm like, well, we got a family now, so you got a lot to think about. But talking to my business partner Chris, he was all in, and we were like, look, good thing there's 2 of us. One could be at one place, one could be at the other. Always going to have a manager or owner presence, to help drive the opportunity. So let's do it. So ended up having 2 restaurants in just under 16 months.
Wow.
As opposed to the 2 in 5 years. So got ahead of our goal, but we're definitely facing the struggles of having to start and operate a new brand in a market that is synonymous with having restaurants that have been there 10, 15, 20 years that you're trying to break into market share, And so we would meet all the time and say, how can we continue to break into this market share? And for us, it was always a couple things. 1, creativity. 2, hospitality. We knew that if we took care of people, we treated them like they were, VIPs. Doesn't matter if it was the guy in the sleeveless shirt with drywall in his hair or, the guy that pulled in on the yacht. It didn't matter. We treat everybody with respect and the honor that they deserve. And then, of course, we got to make sure that we offer awesome products, be creative, constantly doing things. And, basically we try to just under promise and over deliver to the point that it was just synonymous with the brand that you go there to have a good experience, whether it's from the hospitality side and the service and or the cocktails, the food, whatever. And that's kind of how we built the brand. Wow. And we got that thing rolling. 2014 Jacacudas, 2015 Brotulas, and then we had an opportunity to take over another legendary restaurant in Destin, Cuvée, from Chef Tim Prehan, who was kind of like the celebrity chef of Destin.
Yeah.
And he used to come eat at Brotulas all the time. Known my family for a long time, and they were looking to move out to 30A for one of their locations. He said, hey, we got this great location. You guys are doing a great job. Are y'all interested? Met with Chef Tim and dreamed up Cuvée Kitchen and Wine Bar. And took over that location, opened up in summer of 2017, and kind of just started to roll from there.
Yeah. See, I didn't know that you took that opportunity so quick in Brotulas.
Yeah, man, it was scary, and I remember telling my wife, who was just a trooper, she's like,
oh yeah, she is.
What are you going to do? You're going to take on another $500,000 in debt? Like, we've already got the other $600,000. And mind you, this isn't like real estate where you own the property, right?
Yeah.
So you're leasing. So if you don't pay the bills and you can't pay your rent, like they just kick you out and get a new leaseor. You know what I mean? It's no big deal for them. So the business has to work, and the brand has to, just continue to matriculate and become something, or else you're never going to get out of debt. And you're never going to be able to, get the freedom and the income that you're doing. The whole reason you're doing it, right? So it was risky. But, and location, right?
And this isn't some cheap $2,000 a month lease.
No. I mean, so yeah, right, exactly. So, like in the restaurant business, just like a lot of businesses, if you want to have a really good location and you don't own the space, you're going to pay to be there, right? So, this is, entrepreneur, as being in the real estate.
And if people don't know, this is harbor front property.
Yeah. Like we're right here on the Destin Harbor. You're overlooking the Destin Harbor, the East Pass, and the Gulf at Brotulas because it's elevated up on that hill. And I mean, you can't be in locations like this for cheap. And the amount we pay in rent is what some restaurants do a year in sales. Yeah. So you have to be extremely detailed, very process driven. But ultimately, you got to have people coming in to the restaurant and enjoying it to be able to cover those costs, keep your team together, and obviously at the end of the day make profit, right? Because it's business. So it's definitely not easy, but it's a labor of love. It's a passion business. It's not like some of these retail businesses like Louis Vuitton and these types of guys that they're running 40, 50, 60% margin. They can sell one bag every week, two bags a week, and life is good, right? So The restaurant business national average is like 3 to 5% profit.
Oh wow.
So,
Yeah.
simple math, right? Do $1 million in sales, you may make 3 to 5%. Okay, so for all of you out there who think all the restaurant owners are just driving around in Bugattis because the bottle of Tito's is $20 and they sell you a drink for $8, it's not necessarily that way, right? So, simple math would be 50,000 in profit, right, on $1 million in sales. So that's the national average for a full service restaurant.
Yeah.
We because of our seasonality and the brand recognition, we try to hang into those 8 to 12. Some months will be much higher, some months you lose, a lot, you're much lower, right? So it's a labor of love business. Everything matters. You can't waste anything. You got to stay on top of each other and make sure things work the right way. So
yeah,
it's good. It's a good business, man. We love it.
Oh yeah, I love your business because I mean during COVID, I know that was a scary time because I remember when you were like, "Hey, we're shutting down," like you had to because you couldn't. The takeout didn't make sense with the cost of I guess electricity, the employees because you don't have 2 waiters. You got like how many people do you have at one restaurant?
Total,
Probably
we probably sit somewhere in 220, 240 employees total between all the companies, like in high season.
Yeah.
Now that number fluctuates obviously throughout the time because we are seasonal down here in Destin. But yeah, during COVID, I always tell everybody the same thing when they ask me, how did you guys deal with COVID? Because a lot of cities had a lot of different, and states had different situations. For us and me personally, it was the best thing that's ever happened to me personally. Having COVID in our market, in this country, in this state. Now, I know for a lot of people there's nowhere even close to that same answer, right? But for me personally, despite being shut down and being in a lot of debt and having to deal with a lot of these challenges and just the fear of it all, it forced me to reset. It forced me to reset with my family. It forced me to reset with my faith. And those were things that I needed to do. Because when you come from a family like I did, that grew up in a charter business, where your mom made the fishing poles and there was fiberglass all over your table just so your dad could have the poles he needed to fish, and you bump into it going to pee in the middle of the night and your arm itches for like 2 days because it's fiberglass inside your living room and your kitchen, and your mom makes your clothes because it is what it is. Hey, we only bought 2 outfits, we're going to make the other 2. When you start to have success, you can forget where you came from. And I always tried to stay humble, but as you start to grow and you open up 3 concepts in less than 4 years, and you're starting to do well in your sales and you get all this publicity and all the stuff that happens, you could forget like why you were so successful and how you could even get there. And it was all because you're staying humble and being a hard worker, taking advantage of situations that arose. So for me, it really helped me say, like, in the blink of an eye, everything could be taken from you. So like always stay focused on the things that matter the most, which to me was my family, my faith, and the people that were in your corner. You know what I mean? So COVID made me do that because we went from having a really awesome 2019, the business was really starting to flow, all 3 concepts were doing well, to a guy in Tallahassee signing a paper that says your business just ended.
Yeah, and we just came out of winter.
Sure.
So a lot of people they forget about that. Like after Labor Day, it's pretty slow in Destin.
Definitely, yeah. So most, and probably the rentals as well, but definitely in our restaurant business, you don't make any money. You don't turn profit November, December, January, and February. So you may float and you may lose some, but you're really counting on that March spring break kind of refill your coffers type time frame to be able to get caught up on any kind of debt you had, or whatever. Provide raises to your teams, like going into spring, having those extra funds to do that. And whenever they pulled the plug on us, I think it was March 21st.
Sounds right.
Something like that.
Same with us. It was the same time.
I remember I called my wife and she's like, "What's going on, babe?" And I was like, "Well, we just closed the restaurants." She's like, "Oh, why?" Well, the governor, said that we can just do, takeout only, but in Destin, there's, I think think there's 7,000 full-time residents.
Mm-hmm.
There's 200 restaurants. To like be able to have enough takeout, it's just, you're not going to do it, right? So it didn't make sense. So I was like, well, we close the restaurants and, you know, that's it. So what are we going to do? And I said, well, we're going to have dinner tonight with the family. I'm going to cook. I was like, we're going to wake up in the morning. I'm going to make breakfast, and then we'll figure it out. And that's kind of what we did. We just started just being a family. It was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And my daughter was just born in February. Presley.
That's right. She was COVID baby.
So
yeah.
she was let's see, she was 1, and for the first time, because so that was 2020. I had a 1-year-old. Sawyer was 3, and then Jackson was 8. So for the first time in my whole life, I got to be like with the kids, because I just worked every day at the restaurant.
That's true.
Every day. I mean, you
I
show
saw
up at 9, I was there. If you left something at the restaurant, you show up at 8, I was there, right?
You were always there.
It was cool because I got to see and be with one of the youngest baby, which was cool, man, because I never got to do that. So
Yeah.
breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day till we reopened was like May 8th,
We
May
opened
6th, something like that.
the week before Memorial Day.
It was a couple weeks before. Restaurants got to open first.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, they let us open with 25% capacity,
Mm-hmm.
which for those of you who don't know, like the restaurants seat 200, 275, 300 people. You open up at 25% capacity, your 300-seat restaurant just turned into a 90-seat restaurant, right?
Yeah.
So with the rents that we discussed earlier and those types of things, 90 seats, I mean, that's a fine dining restaurant, you know, in any city.
Mm-hmm.
But you're not operating in the same margins as that, right? So it was better than nothing, but not near what we needed to be, and they kind of slowly got us going all the way to 2020. But for me, man, like resetting with my faith and like pouring in all that, and then being with my family, like I'll never forget that, because of that, my family's like strong today.
Mm-hmm.
They know who Daddy is. They know that Daddy respects Mom. They understand the process of what a strong family is today. And to me, like, if there was more strong families, we would have a lot less problems.
Oh yeah.
In America,
Yeah.
probably in the world,
Yeah.
but definitely in our country. And you know, that's one thing I will say about our area. We have a lot of strong families in our area, and I think that's why it's such a great place to live.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
It attracts other strong families too.
Yeah, exactly. And we're the area is blessed because of that.
Oh,
There's no doubt.
Absolutely.
So for me, other than being just completely like crazy, because you went from like having a business that you built for 4 years completely just taken from you in like a stroke of a pen, it was awesome.
Yeah.
Because it let me reset. So when we came back into it, my business partner, myself, and our team, man, we were ready to rock. You know, we were refreshed, we were focused, we were appreciative, we were humble, we did everything that we needed to do. So as we came out of that, the brand just got way, way stronger.
And that became one of your best years ever, right?
Yeah, 21 and 22. Well, 2020, because of the limitations on the seating,
Yeah.
was okay. But 21 and 22 were the best areas, or the best years that
Record-breaking.
our company ever had.
Nice.
And, you know, 40% growth,
Yeah.
25% growth, which doesn't happen in the restaurant business. You if you can get 3 to 5, 10, you did something that's super spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, Florida was open. Governor woke up and let us just, you know, make our own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, I mean, you know, lives got changed and generations got changed for a long time in this area.
Oh yeah.
In this state.
Yeah, absolutely.
And others as well, but definitely in Florida. So,
Oh yeah.
So yeah, to me, like, other than just learning how to refocus and settle in and learning how to manage my time and like being there for family and team members and yada yada, you know, COVID was the best thing that ever happened to us as a company.
Yeah, I think that's true for a lot of places in Florida. It just grew people's businesses. I mean, it did it for mine, did it for a lot of people. It grew the whole area. So there was definitely some pros that came out of it. I guess the big pro that came out of it was it woke a lot of people up.
Yeah.
Where they were just like, I have to get around like-minded people like Florida. I got to get out of this crazy place I'm living. Kind of like say like strong families.
Yeah.
Like if you're coming here and you're not about that, you're gonna stick out like a sore thumb. And you're probably not gonna do very well.
Absolutely.
So like people, at least the people I know that I have seen move here from, let's say, California, New York, they're the good ones. You know, like they want what we have,
Sure.
and they were kind of just needing that like little push to be like, now's the time to pack up and sell it, and let's get down to Florida,
Right.
or places like Texas, wherever. Like it just gave them what they needed.
I think one unique thing about COVID and what it did for our market, as in like the Panhandle, is people that would normally go to visit other markets in Florida from larger metropolitan areas, whether it's Indianapolis or St. Louis or wherever, right, in the Midwest, that maybe would go to Orlando to go Disney World or whatever, or they'd go down to Miami because they want to watch sports or go to the beach or whatever. They started to realize that there was more to Florida than just those big cities that we have in the South. And not only did it allow a lot of business traffic to come into our area, it basically sparred like a whole second home movement, a whole real estate movement, that were a lot of people that had never been here.
Yeah.
And now those same people are telling their friends, family, hey, come stay at my place, or we got to go revisit. And the amount of flights the airport's like BPS has like tripled in size since then.
Yeah.
And it really put a perspective for people that you don't have to go to the city to go to Florida. You don't have to go to like the known spots, and you can still get a really cool vacation.
Yeah.
And good food, good cocktails, all the things that they get in the city, but still lets them be near the beach. And I think that's, for us, that was in our market, in our industry, it was huge.
Yeah.
It was huge. So kudos to the people that helped capitalize on getting those flights and all that type of stuff here, because it really opened up a lot of markets to Destin that you never would have heard of it. South Walton, just the same. So
Oh yeah.
I thought that was great, because those are the types of people that you want to have come vacation in your market, right? People that understand and appreciate good families. They appreciate good service. They appreciate hospitality. And they just appreciate life, I guess would probably be the best way to say it. The more people that you have around that are in that scenario, you usually get better results.
Yeah. So you being native, born and raised here,
Yeah.
would you say that was probably one of the biggest growths you've ever seen hit the area, was COVID?
Yeah, definitely. So I was born and raised. I always say I was born and raised in Destin, but it's actually not 100% true, because there was no hospitals in Destin when I was born here.
It's Fort Walton, right?
Yeah, it's Fort Walton,
Yeah.
right? So, and I'm not that old. You know what I mean? Like, there's a little bit of gray, but that's because 3 kids and 3 restaurants and
Just
catering for a bunch of clients.
Just
you know?
turned 41, right? 42?
Just turned 41,
Just turned
yeah.
41, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not that old, and
Yeah.
there was no hospitals in Destin. Okay, so it was born in Fort Walton, raised in Destin, and 2-lane road. I think Great Beach was a nude beach. You know what I mean? Like, that was nothing. There was nothing there when I was growing up in the '80s, and then all that development had gone over the years. But I'd say there was probably 2 like main growth spurts. One was in like the mid '90s, towards the later half of the '90s. I was just getting into high school. Things were really starting to kind of develop, and then I left for college, played baseball a couple of years, and then ended up at Florida State. And I remember coming home in 2005, and a buddy of mine was like, "Hey, we're staying in Sandestin." Well, I knew Sandestin of like a bunch of like gray looking, terrible, like townhome looking condos that were just like, whatever. And we show up at this place called Baytown, and I'm like, what is happening to this little tiny sleepy Destin? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you really started to see, you go out towards Panama City, and you got all these little, Seaside had popped up, had been there a little while, but it had started to grow. Great Beach was starting to grow, and then you have all these other little communities. But so I would say, yeah, probably like late '90s, and then early 2000s into mid 2000s was a lot of development. But so when 2021 and 22 happened, all the stuff was here, and it was able to take in all of those people that wanted to come here. So that development was like just perfect timing as it approached for such a crazy time as COVID. You know what I mean? But yeah, man, we used to, where Emerald Grand is.
Yeah, what was there before?
It was like a place that looked like needed John's lawn care service. Wasn't there lawn care service? Charms.
Florida Charms Lawn Care.
Yeah, Florida Charms
Yeah.
Lawn. That's
Great time for a commercial to thank our sponsor,
Yeah,
Florida Charms
selfless
Lawn
plug
Care.
right
If
there.
you need your bushes cut, grass cut, hit us up.
Yeah, definitely call John, and all this rain we just had today, it'd probably be a good time to get your grass cut this week. But yeah, it was like all like native looking, shrubbery or whatever. Drive down the hill, there's Marina Point down there. It was like the market of the water, you know what I mean? Fill your gas for your boat, or you get a little cup of snacks or whatever. And now you got Harbor Walk and all that stuff. But we used to be able to go down there, and you could slide down the hill on a little sand hill on like a boogie board or whatever. And the sand dunes were 50 feet tall on the island.
Really?
I mean,
wow.
It was crazy, man. It was simple, man. It was beach town, fishing town. You just play sports, fish, and try not to get too much trouble.
And so people, obviously I know, but people don't know. They probably hear like, oh, wow, this guy's really successful with the restaurant business. You didn't inherit that from mommy and daddy. Your dad was Air Force veteran.
Yeah.
And then went from Air Force veteran to fishing charter.
That's right.
If I'm right?
Yeah, so a lot of my family was actually in the military. And my mom and dad, my dad was born in California. His father, so my grandfather, he was in the Air Force. My dad was in the Air Force. My uncle was a Huey pilot in the Marines for 25 years, then they kicked him out. My mom's dad was in the Army. Her brother was in the Army. So like we have a lot of military in our family, and ended up in Destin because Dad went to the Air Force. He got stationed at Eglin. So that's how we ended up here. So they grew up in Ohio, country, farm, small town, just doing hay and horses, cows, all small town stuff, man, that teach you how to be humble, thankful, be a good person, all those traits that are missing in today's world.
Oh yeah, tough.
Yeah, tough.
He's a very tough guy. Yeah.
So he got into the Air Force, and he was doing electronics for like missiles and bombs and stuff. So he did electronics. They put him out in the woods in case something blew up, But he fished in his spare time, and he just loved it, man. He fell in love with it, and he started doing that, working for Tommy Green, which his family started another Broken Egg Cafe here in Destin. So the original one was where right there in front of AJ's where Fat Boys is now.
Yeah.
So that used to be another Broken Egg Cafe.
Oh, that's cool.
So Tommy Green's brother Ron, he started that company with Tommy, and they all did that. And but he was a fisherman, and Dad was on his boat for a while, and then I had a chance to become a captain for these two doctors out of Cincinnati. They had a boat that they kept down here in Destin at Holiday Isle. And eventually he was like, man, I need to start my own business. So this is how crazy times are now versus how things used to happen. This is a great story. And I didn't know this story until Mr. Bob Inez, who just passed away last year. I grew up with his daughters that were same age, and he's an entrepreneur from Cleveland, Ohio, that came down here to Destin. Well, Dad used to take them fishing all the time, him and his two girls, Amy and Stacy, awesome family. And whenever it came time that he wanted to have a chance to get his own boat, he went and asked Bob for some help. And Bob said, well, Gary, you're the hardest worker I know. You're the best fisherman I know. What do you need? He goes, I need $25,000 to put the down payment to get this boat. And he's like, I'll pay it all back to you in X amount of time, and I just hope you can help me out. I mean, we had nothing. My dad and mom, they grew up like in a little tiny like trailer little house over on Calhoun, off Calhoun or whatever. And so he goes, okay, gets out a napkin, and he writes, Gary Jarvis owes Bob Benezzi $25,000 for a boat loan. Pay back as soon as possible. gives it. He said, here, Gary, sign right here. Gary signs the napkin, gives it back to Bob. Bob calls his accountant and says, hey, write Gary a check for $25,000.
That's cool.
Go get the boat, man. So a couple years later, Dad took him. He had paid him in little increments, but he took him the last check. He took him the last check and said, here you go, Bob. He's like, I'm so thankful for you and believing in me and just giving me a chance and being an inspiration as an entrepreneur, yada yada. And he was like, here's the last payment. And he's like, do I need to sign anything? And Bob goes, hold on a second. Opens up his drawer in his office, pulls out the napkin.
Wow.
And said, it's the last payment? He goes, yes, sir. He's like, thank you. Rips the napkin in half, shakes his hand, and goes, that's great. Thank you for doing that for me.
Wow.
Thank you for paying me back and being honest. It was so, my dad always taught us, like, hey, it's in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be, if you get into debt, you pay it back. So if you borrow something for somebody, you give it back, right? So that's how he got his first business deal, and that was his first real, like, entrepreneurship. So I guess you could say it's in our blood somewhere along the way. But,
Yeah.
But pretty cool story.
How many years apart was that between the napkin when he pulled it back out?
I want to say he told me it took him 7 years.
No kidding. He had that in his drawer for 7 years.
So what he did is he would take Bob and his daughters fishing.
Yeah.
Along the way, just helping them out. Anytime they called, they were the VIPs of the boat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And Bob loved to fish, and so his youngest daughter, Amy, she loved to fish the most. But anyway, yeah. So he got it all paid off, and that's how Dad got his first boat. And ended up getting a second one and trying to like have multiple things, but for him, having two was just too much.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't scale it, right? And that happens to a lot of people. Like, oh, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm going to have this huge brand. And they get one and then they get stuck, right? They try to get the second one and then everything falls apart because now they don't know how to manage their time.
Yeah.
They don't know how to manage people, right? Because if you got two boats, you can't drive them both at the same time.
Got to rely on somebody else.
Got to rely on somebody else, right? So, as you know, in your company, in your large company,
it's hard to scale.
You've got to really, really understand scaling and how to implement the processes and the checks and balances to be able to do it. Mm-hmm. So he did that a couple of years, and he was like, "That's it, man. I'm selling the boat." So he sold the other boat, and then ended up just with the one, and then did it for another 20-something years. So he was a 37-year charter boat vet, man.
Wow. What was the name of that first boat?
So it was called the Back Down.
That is the Back Down.
So the Back Down won.
That's the best roll at Jack Yakutas.
Yeah.
I love the Back Down roll.
So that roll, some of y'all probably know, like you've been to Harbor Docks, the Back Down roll. So I was talking to Yoshi, who's the head chef at Harbor Docks, a couple of years ago. She came to Cuvée every now and again, so we would chat. And super sweet lady, amazing chef, and she told me. So they have that roll at every restaurant they have, and they've got several. For those who don't know, Harbor Docks has like several concepts in multiple cities. The Morgan family does. Another local Destin family.
They have like what Camellias and something
Mobile, Harbor Docks, and Chuck's Fish House. Several others, but every restaurant that they have sushi, they have the Back Down roll.
Oh, no kidding.
And she had told me they had sold like something crazy, like 5 million Back Down rolls.
Wow.
At the time, this was a couple of years ago, probably double that now because of the volume that came in since then. But that role got created by the sushi chefs because we used to go to Harbor Docks all the time when I was growing up. Every time I'd come back in town in college, they'd go there and have sushi. It was the only sushi restaurant in Destin. And they did an awesome job, and they created that role for Dad.
That's awesome.
And it became like some next level role for them. And
so
we created the Back Down 2 role at Jack Yakutas. So when we opened our own sushi restaurant, we're like, well, we need to kind of reclaim that. And that was his second boat. It was called the Back Down 2.
Gotcha.
So for those who don't know, Back Down didn't come because he's like such a wild man, and he makes people like gets in people's face and stuff like that.
Yeah, he doesn't back down.
Yeah, it's zero back down coming from the mayor, former mayor, I should say. But it's actually when you're bill fishing and you have a fish on, you actually drive backwards towards the fish to like make it easier to catch it.
Oh.
So it'll shorten the line, make the fight easier. So that's backing down, if you will. But that's where the name of the boat came from.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so a little fun fact.
That's cool.
Back Down. Everybody that we met along the way was like, oh yeah, everybody, but it's back down off of Scary Gary, like gotta get out of his way, But yeah, that wasn't where the name.
Definitely not the case with Gary at all.
Yeah.
Now, that's one thing I like about your restaurants, the little names that like for instance, bruchulas. I didn't know that was a fish.
Yeah.
For years,
Yeah.
I thought at first I almost thought it was like something like Brothers or something. I wasn't really sure what it was. You're like, oh, it's a fish, and you sent it to me. I was like, oh, I was like, that's what a brutula is. And then actually one time I think maybe you or Gary actually caught one and like brought it back in and cooked it, and I got to try one.
Yeah.
Because I think you said they're like way out in the deep or something.
Yeah, a little deeper water, and usually in like the 250 to 350 foot deep, which you don't have to go that deep to catch fish out here in Destin. We're pretty blessed with being close to the shelf, but it's so like all the restaurant names or the first two essentially were, and really even East Pass, we tried to tie them into the community a little bit. I mean, that's who we were for my whole life growing up, was being part of the community. I mean, my mom was like, when we started, the original seafood festival was like the moms and the wives of Destin, like putting it on to help raise money for the Charter Boat Association.
Oh, no kidding.
So like, you would have like wives cooking the food, not
Yeah.
like carnies and these other people that you got nowadays. It's obviously grown and been different, but that's how it used to be. So like Jackacuda's is actually named after a location that's called the Jackacuda spot, which is a fishing location where we catch amberjack and things like that. And so we tried to tie different names back into community brotulas, you know, catching these little cusk eels or bearded brotula off the coast of Destin. Amazing tasting fish. We've been able to get it quite a bit more. It's a bycatch, so you can't really fish for it, but you catch it when you're trying to catch like yellow edge grouper and deep water grouper, things like that. But it's amazing. White, flaky.
Oh, it was good.
Yeah,
I remember it was very good. Yeah.
Yeah, so, and then, you know, Cuvée Kitchen, we tried to pay a little homage to Cuvée, kept that name. And then now we have East Pass Seafood and Oyster House, which, you know, sitting right there on the mouth of the East Pass just kind of made sense. So we, everything we do, we try to just tie it in with a little bit of story to the town. And, I mean, we're just thankful for Destin, man. Like,
Oh, yeah.
they've been super supportive of us, and we've been able to give back so much. So we're happy.
It's nice to have restaurants like yours that aren't like just big corporate, like it just nationwide brand or something. Like you actually have something from the local community, born and raised basically. So Gary, charter boat captain, I'm guessing you probably grew up working on the boats, so you actually know how to fish and come into all this. What point was it? Because you and your partner Chris, y'all went to high school together, right?
Yeah. So Chris is a funny story. So his family is actually all from Columbus, Ohio.
Okay.
And my parents, and they all grew up in Ohio as well, just outside of Dayton, in a small town called Brookville. And so there's a little bit of connection there. But Chris's father worked for Boeing.
Oh.
And they did stuff for, you know, military contracts and all that type of stuff. And they got his dad was kind of getting towards the end of his retirement, and they said, hey, okay, you got two choices: Fort Walton Beach or I think Oklahoma City. He was like, we'll go Fort Walton Beach. So that's actually how I met Chris. They moved here from California in 7th grade.
Okay.
So we both played baseball, and that's how we met. So middle school, high school, played baseball all the way up, and we both played similar positions, so just kind of became friends during that process in that time. But you know, growing up on the boat was cool, but also hard.
Did he do that with you too?
What's that?
Did Chris
No, he didn't do that. When I started getting to high school and I was playing a lot of sports, the time I had was just less and less and less, so I couldn't really do like full-time job in the summertime. Luckily, we were starting to, as a family, kind of become, you know, a little bit more successful from growing up, where, you know, mom makes you clothes and fishing poles, to, you know, having things a little bit, you know, better, looking up. Dad having multiple businesses, selling one, doing those types of things. So I didn't have to work as much on the boat when I was getting a little bit older. But I mean, summer times, we'd go clean the boat. That was our job, you know, whenever you weren't playing sports. That's kind of how it was, man. My dad would used to, like, this is probably not even legal, but you can't, like, when people work, you have to pay them, you know. But back then, you know, things were a little bit different, family business. So he'd come in the next day, and if, like, the boat wasn't clean enough for him, he just wouldn't pay me. And I'd be like, hey, man, did I get my pay for yesterday? He's like, no, you don't get it. And I'm like, what did I miss? Oh, well, I hid a penny on the galley toilet, like behind it. I put a penny underneath in that little. You guys ever clean? If for those who haven't cleaned toilets, there's a little crevice right on the thing. It actually goes over top of the nuts that you can take the toilet off, right? But anyway, he put like little pennies like behind there, and if I didn't see him, then he'd be like, you didn't get the penny, or he'd put like a wrap, like a pretzel wrapper or something, like in between the cushions. And if I didn't get it, because I didn't like wipe in between the cushions, he wouldn't pay me. So, needless to say, it teaches you attention to detail.
Yeah.
And like, if you wanted your course back then, it was like $40, you know. But for like a 8th grader or 9th grader, it's like $1 million, you know,
Oh,
especially
yeah.
back in like late 90s. But so I'm thankful for it now. At the time, I was like, man, just worked 3 hours for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Little, I guess I was learning life skills, but at the time, I just wanted the $40 so I could buy paintball gear or baseball cards or something, you know?
Yeah.
But so we grew up on the boat, and after working for my dad, he's pretty tough. You know, similar to a lot of people, he tried to like push us away from the business a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, he was like, "Do you love fishing? Do you love this business, or not? Because if you don't love it, then I don't want you to even get anywhere near it. Because it's one of those businesses, just like restaurants and a lot of businesses. If you don't love it and have like a real passion for it, you're gonna quit like the very first time adversity shows up. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was one thing that he taught us. Like, if you don't love like sweating and being in the engine room and trying to fix something that's broken so you can actually make it home, then you don't want to be a fisherman. You know what I mean? If you don't love like, you know, being at sea for 7 days with no phone to talk to anyone and sleeping for 2 days of the 7, then you don't want to be a fisherman.
Mm-hmm.
So none of that sounded very good to me at the time. You know what I mean? So I really actually found out I loved hunting way more than fishing, because it was just like, it wasn't a real job. You know, you just go have fun and enjoy nature and
Yeah.
do those types of things. So,
Yeah, fishing is hard.
but yeah, so that's I kind of never really, I like it, but
Mhm.
it was never something that I was super passionate about like he was. So he was like, look, if you're not passionate about it, find something to be passionate about, and whatever you do, just go like 150%.
Mhm.
And that's kind of how I ended up getting into the restaurant business.
So was that, I guess, like in high school, you're like, hey, you know what? You and Chris were talking one day, and you're like, we're gonna do some restaurants one day. Is that how it came up?
No,
or-
that was a little bit later actually with Chris.
Mhm.
Now, what happened actually was in the summer of I think it was my sophomore year. We were taking Mr. Benezzi and his family fishing, and he told me like, "Hey, look, man, if you don't want to work for your dad, he's pretty tough on you." You know what I mean, and for those who know, his name is Scary Gary. That's his nickname. So it's not just Gary or the mayor. He's pretty tough, and you know, that's why he's so successful and so good, right?
Yeah.
Like most of those guys, you know. But he told me, hey, if you want to try something different, you know, we have all the restaurants, and you know, I'll hire you. He's like, you're a hard worker. He's like, I love your dad, I love your family. He's like, why don't you just come check it out, see if you like it. I was like, okay, cool, man. My family growing up, we didn't really go out to a lot of restaurants. We just ate fish a lot, or deer from like wintertime, summertime. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we didn't do that a lot, you know. And there wasn't a lot of restaurants in Destin that were like, it wasn't like, that wasn't part of our upbringing, going to eat out a lot. We didn't do that. So I remember going to work at the Crab Trap on Ookloos Island.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the place looks like a fortress, like a mansion to me.
Mhm.
You know, it's just gigantic. It's overlooking the water. And Mr. Benezzi gets me a job. I said, oh, go see Justin. He's the general manager over there. I'll make sure he hires you, you know. And I remember going to sit down, and he's like, all right, what do you want to do? I was like, I don't really know, man. I haven't even been to that many restaurants, much less worked in one. He's like, oh, well, Mr. Benezzi told me that you you have a good attention to detail, and you're a good athlete in sports, so you must move really fast. I was like, yeah, that's probably pretty true. He's like, you'll be perfect for the dish pit. So he made me a dishwasher. And I'm like, all right, cool. So that's how I started. Went and washed the dishes, did that a little bit, started cooking on the line, helping those guys out, then worked the expo side, you know, putting plates together, getting food out, and then eventually went into the front of the house over the next couple summers. Because I only did it during the summer, and during the school year we were too busy with school and sports to really do anything else. So started washing dishes, man, fry cooking, and that was a busy restaurant, man. Like back then, and
Oh, I bet.
I was like,
That's
90
probably one of the few restaurants there too.
yeah,
right?
late '90s,
Yeah.
you know, all the way into the 2000s. I mean, man, we were setting record after record after record. I remember they were doing $30,000-$40,000 a day back then,
Wow.
crushing it. And it was busy, man. The restaurant was huge, so it was a lot of crab, a lot of fried shrimp, man.
A lot of dishes.
Yeah, dude, tons of dishes. Oh man, but you know, the restaurants. It's interesting because a lot of successful businesses, how you treat the lowest person on the totem pole is how successful the company is. And the respect that they had, their company, for their dishwashers, which is the lowest position, if you will, in the restaurant typically. It's like the intro position or the position that, requires the least amount of skill. But the respect that they had and that they put upon their team members to make sure they had for the dish people, like, really showed me a lot. You know what I mean? That if you want something to work, you better respect everybody to the same level. If not, you'll have a hard time when everything gets going super busy or things get tough. Because the first person to walk out is going to be that guy with the dishes stacked up to the ceiling, soaking wet, hot, and it was cool, man. And I remember ever since whenever I left that position, man, like when I was in the front of the house or cooking or whatever, you always check on those guys. You need anything? Can I do anything? You stack your stuff nice and neat, make it as easy as you can for those people because they're the most important person.
Yeah.
So we kind of look at everything like that now.
That's how it was in vacation business too. Like the housekeepers are actually the most important.
Right.
Like I can't rent the house if it's not clean.
Exactly.
Right? Can't serve food if you ain't got the dishes.
Sure.
And unfortunately they also get the most heat, right? Like everything, like for us in vacation, every complaint would start with, I found a gum wrapper behind a sofa or something.
Yeah.
I found a piece of dirt in the corner of the house.
Sure.
So they get it all the time. And it's definitely one of the hardest jobs. And I know, I mean, I did dishes in high school too.
Yeah.
And it's just like, it's never ending. Like you get caught up and the next thing you know, you just got buckets of dishes. And you're just like, oh, like it's just never ending.
Yeah, it doesn't end until the lights go out, man.
Yeah, it was actually one of my favorite jobs I think I had in high school because me and like all my friends would always quit. But I always had like one of my friends in high school, he would do dishes with me and he'd probably work there for like 3 months and quit. And another one of my friend would take his spot and that. And
let me ask you a question. Out of all those friends that quit, which ones are the most successful? The ones that quit more often or less often?
Yeah, they're yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
I think that's important because, like I was telling you, my dad said, like, if you're not passionate about something, it doesn't matter what you're doing. The chances of you quitting are extremely high.
Oh, yeah.
Right? I mean, I'm not in the military, but I listened to all the stories you told me from the trips we've taken and just some of the other guys. Like, there's a reason that they make things so difficult because they want you to quit because they don't want you to quit when it matters, right?
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of life is that way, you know what I mean? If you want to be successful, you got to be so, like, crazy passionate about succeeding that you don't let physical pain, mental pain, in that case, right?
Yeah.
Or in this case, lack of understanding of how to, fill out paperwork or do whatever, right? Or, the time that it takes to be successful. Like, you don't let any of that get in your way if you're crazy passionate about your goal.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest challenges that people face.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason that they're not successful or they can't open the business they want to open or they can't run the business successfully as they want to run it is that they haven't faced enough adversity in their life to be able to keep going.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think, the reason that they call them like the 1%ers, right? Or if you want to make, I don't know, what is it, $450,000 a year means you're in the top 4%, right? You're in like the 1 to 4% there.
I think it's, I think it's like 4%.
Yeah. So if you want to be in that 1 to 4%, probably 99% of those people, there's a couple of silver spooners in there, but 99% of them were just people that didn't quit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
They figured it out, right? And they figured it out through team members, through mentors, through just failing, or whatever. But they didn't quit, and I think that's key. Like, if you want to be successful in anything, just don't quit.
Exactly.
Yeah,
that's a good point. Like, everyone thinks like going through special operative like training, like Hell Week, the pipeline. They're all like, oh, I just won't quit on the run. I just won't quit on the push-ups, right? But that's the easy stuff. The running, the push-ups, the swimming. That's actually the one time you're not really getting messed with because you're doing physical exertion, right?
Yeah.
It's the rest of it, as we call it. It's just the suck. That's what we call it.
Yeah.
It's nothing that, it might not even be hard. You're just literally sitting in the woods. You're standing there. Like when I went to Army Airborne, it was the most boring school I ever went to in my life. I just stood there for hours. Like when I say hours, 8 hours a day, 10, 15 hours a day. You just stood there to do like 3 training iterations. And you're just standing there all day and you're just like, and it's hot, Fort Benning, Georgia. And you're just like, this sucks. And the only thing you can do, you can't have a cell phone. We take our helmets and you just throw rocks in it. So that was our fun, just throwing rocks into helmets.
It's like helmet pong.
Yeah, just
but you don't get to chug any beer.
Throwing rock for 3.5 weeks, right? But it's the suck, right?
Yeah.
And that's what a lot of people that's where they give up on, because a lot of these dudes would be like, let's say, phenomenal athlete studs, but when you're just not super passionate, and you start to realize like when you're actually in reality now, and you're like, oh, I gotta do this for 4 more months, 6 more months, 2 more years. That's where I see a lot of people just give up. They have the physical ability to do it.
Sure.
They just don't have the passion for it. I think we probably saw a lot of that even during, like, let's say COVID. You know, a lot of people just kind of just gave it up and packed house and left without realizing, like, hey, the good times are about to be around the corner.
Yeah.
I think that's a lot just in a lot of, I see that a lot in business. A lot of people would always talk to me about, like, property management, and they'd be like, oh, I want to get into it as well. And I'm like, look, you're kind of seeing like the good times of me in property management. You didn't see the first 3 years. Like, it's not fun. It's not pretty. People aren't going to be nice to you. And I've seen a lot of people, they would start a company and probably within 6 months, a lot of them would shut it down.
Sure.
Because they're just like, yeah, this isn't as sexy as I thought it was going to be. And
well, I think that probably goes for any company or successful situation, right? Like, I mean, take a professional athlete. Like, oh, it looks cool when you're winning the Super Bowl. But, like, people forgot that you, like, have, like, 10 million buckets of sweat that it took prior to that opportunity, right? So I feel like it's the same way in the restaurants, you know. You got people coming out of these, you know, really high-quality culinary schools, Johnson & Wales, CIA, yada, yada, yada. I mean, they're coming out with a great foundation, and they're coming out with a great education. But just because all that happened doesn't mean you're the next Gordon Ramsay.
Yeah.
Right? Gordon Ramsay wasn't Gordon Ramsay because he just got a bad attitude and likes to cuss and scream and he can cook. You know what I mean? Like, that took years of working in a French kitchen, countless hours, countless technique, opportunities, failing success. And that's where I think today's generation is a little lacking, is that it takes effort and time and years and hours to achieve, you know, what you have or where you want to get, right? And we see it all the time in the restaurants. You know, we have these guys come in, oh, I went to this school and went to that school, or I worked at this restaurant, worked at that restaurant. And you're like, wow, that's all fantastic. Okay, I want to be the chef. Well, you've never been a chef, right? Have you ever managed a group of 50 line cooks, dishwashers, etc.? Have you ever, you know, dealt with 1,000 guests a day for, you know, 60 days, 70 days in a row? Well, no. Okay, well, maybe you're just not quite ready. Maybe we should start at this position. Well, I went to school and I got this piece of paper and they told me I could get this job. Well, guess what? That's not reality, right? You're not just going to, like, poof into being a superstar chef. Like, that takes time.
Yeah.
And you know, in today's world with, you know, all the things that you got, all the access that you have to getting everything, like, immediately, there's one thing that's not immediate: success. Because you have to fail, you have to learn, you have to struggle, you have to have adversity. And all the successful people have all that. And what people see is the end result, like you said. Oh, you know, John's got a jet, he's got a plane. Like, yeah, well, you didn't see John in 2017 when I saw him.
Yeah.
With half a shirt on and looking like he was the only guy that could do tile, apparently.
And driving a Prius.
Yeah, driving his Prius.
In my old Chevy truck.
Yeah, definitely got here from Washington State. You can tell with that Prius, right? But, you know, and I think that's a lot of the thing. Like, same thing with us, Chris and I. People are like, oh, you guys silver spoon, y'all inherited all this money in these restaurants. Like, hold on, man. You didn't see us tiling and jackhammering the floor at Brotula's because it was 21 years of filth to put in a new one so we could actually function, right? You didn't see us laying the wood ourselves, right? Well, that happened, but we don't talk about it, right? Because it's just part of it.
Yeah,
it's just what
it.
you have to do. So for us, it was just normal. You know what I mean? Yeah, we could have paid $2 million to remodel the restaurant, but we didn't have $2 million. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
We only had $100,000
Yeah.
to get a loan for $500,000 just so we have enough to open. You know, and it took us 3 or 5 years to pay that off. So I think a lot of people just, you know, in today's world especially, and maybe it's always been like that, I don't know. But I think with technology and the way things happen so quickly now, is people forget, like, they want success overnight, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
You know, and I coach 11U travel baseball in my spare time, right? A lot of spare time. And my son, you know, he's a younger kid on that team, and that's what I tell the kids. Like, look, you're not going to be, you know, they don't know some of these older players. So I got to say, you're not going to be Mike Trout, like, tomorrow. Like, Mike Trout became the guy he is because he worked all these years and all these hours and all this time at being a good hitter, being the best player he could be, right? So I think that's what has to be passed on to the next generation and to up-and-coming entrepreneurs and, like, young managers or young real estate agents or whatever, right? Like,
You can't just train for a month or two and expect to be Gordon Ramsay.
exactly.
Like, I see that all the time. And,
You know?
And I see that in every business, but I think it is kind of like unfortunately, the mindset of a lot of people. They just think like, oh, I'll just go really hard for a few months and then I'm going to be there.
Sure.
Like, and they think they're doing something so unique, and I'm like, that's what everybody else is doing. Like, you haven't, how do I always say this? Like, you haven't put in the time to be successful yet. You can't just train for 2 months. I see all the time people like, oh, I'm going to train for a few months and go to selection for the military. I'm like, you need to be training for years just to get into the initial part. Like, you can't just go run for 2 months prior and be like, hey, I'm going to go be Special Forces.
Yeah.
Unless you were already a phenomenal athlete in college or something like that.
You have a
track
gift.
runner, football player, or something like that.
Right.
But I see that all the time. I see it a lot in real estate. People are like, oh, I'm just going to dive deep into it, and I'm just going to become a super successful agent. I'm like, but what have you been doing to prepare yourself to be successful? Because you weren't trying to be successful the last 5 years in your life.
Right.
You were doing nonsense with your time, and now all of a sudden that you watch a TikTok video and you're motivated, like, that's great, but how long is that motivation going to last? For a couple of years. And I would think probably a lot of people don't even realize, but like, from my very limited experience in the restaurant industry, like, being a chef is a leader. You set the tempo in that entire kitchen.
Yeah.
And I seen that at a few restaurants. I think I told you when I was in Vegas, me and Riz went to this Michelin restaurant, and the head chef was just ripping this dude in Chinese, speaking Mandarin.
Yeah.
And I was just like, it was a white guy. And I was like, this guy's speaking like full on Mandarin. And he was mad about something. I just remember, I guess it was a sushi. Someone handed him something, and he just was livid. And we were sitting there like at the bar watching. I was just like, man, but like, I mean, you really are like the leader of that kitchen as the chef.
Yeah.
Everything's a reflection of you.
Yeah. It's like that, and obviously on the kitchen side, it's definitely the chef is the leader, and then of course if you're the owner, you're leading everyone, general manager leading everyone, right? Any kind of leadership position, your team is a reflection of you. So if your team isn't working hard, maybe you're not working hard enough, right? If your team is sloppy and lazy, maybe you're kind of sloppy and lazy, or you're not holding them accountable, and you're letting them be sloppy and lazy, which is just as bad, right? And I think, one of the biggest challenges we have now that I didn't see when I first started in the business is that people have a really hard time when you tell them that they're not doing something the right way, or that they aren't holding the standard of whatever that standard is, right? It doesn't matter if it's in front of the house, back of the house, vendors dealing with other businesses. They have a really hard time being, called out, for lack of better terms.
Yeah.
And I think that's a lost art that's, kind of slowly leaving probably a lot of industries, just humanity, maybe in general. Maybe it's the social media hiding behind a keyboard thought process where I don't have to look you in the face and say what I'm going to say, so I can be a little bit tougher. But when I do come in a situation where somebody's face to face, then I feel like offended, or I feel, like scared or whatever, right? So I think it's a crazy phenomenon, man, because like where I grew up, like if you're on the boat fishing and you do something wrong, my dad would come over to the microphone and just wear you out. We had a microphone. What are you doing? Is that how we learn how to gas? Da, 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 da. Whatever, right?
Instant feedback.
Next thing you know, you might have a Diet Coke fly down and hit you in the back. I mean, it's all stuff that just completely would never fly in today's sissy world. You know what I mean? But that's how it was. Like, you do it right and you do it 150%, or you just get out of the way. Mm-hmm. Somebody else will do it, right? Not that way anymore. You know? Can you imagine looking on the news like, oh, business owner throws Diet Coke across kitchen and hits guy in the head, and you know what I mean? Like, it'd be crazy, right? So
that was a hard thing for me in business.
So it's part of that process is learning how to tell people that they're not holding the standard and that they have to step their game up or elevate their performance.
Yeah.
Or else the whole situation falls apart, right? Because if I'm the chef and we're serving X amount of people and there's all these different stations, probably just like the guy who was yelling at the guy in Mandarin, he's relying 100% on that individual to give him what he's trying to give to the customer from that experience, that dish, whatever it is, right? In perfection. He isn't the one physically going to make it, because if he was, he couldn't get that mad at anybody but himself, and it probably would have been perfect, right? Mm-hmm. But now you're a leader and you have to rely on your team to be successful. So it's how they're trained, how much they care, how well they were prepared, where their mind was at that time, right? All those things come into play. And that's what makes our business and a lot of businesses tough, is that you're relying on a lot of people. And they have to be tuned in good enough or focused enough to execute consistently over and over and over and over and over again. And when they don't, you know, things get out of whack, or a customer has a bad experience, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it can be crazy. In y'all's case, somebody doesn't do their job, what happens?
Man,
in your former life, I'll say.
I always
right?
tell people, I'd always
You know?
tell my property managers or like receptionists, I'd say your one bad day causes me a whole bad year.
Right.
Because I get that bad review in my profile
Sure.
for a year. I now have to go into multiple phone calls with the homeowner for
right?
weeks. And I'm like, so you're that one day you're mad, and you just feel like you just need to let it go. Like, it causes me all these third order effects. It's a domino effect.
Yeah. Same in our business.
And it was one thing I had to learn. Going from where I came from in the military and the teams, you got instant feedback whether you wanted it or not. Constructive criticism was the polite way of calling it. But, like,
Sure.
I mean, my team sergeant would just be like, hey, you stupid, you know? Like, whatever. Just like when they would just call you right there. Oh, Riz is walking in, dog's barking. But, like, you got instant feedback. Yeah. And then after every training, every mission, we would do, they call it a hot wash. It was instant. Here's what we did good. Here's what we did bad.
Sure.
Right? And I tried to apply that in a nicer way when I first got into business. Like, I had to work on my people skills.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be like, hey, stupid. Like, I knew that wasn't going to work.
Right.
But I would just be like, hey, you messed this up. Don't do it again. But if I was that direct with people, they just wouldn't show up to work.
Sure.
I wouldn't even get a 2-week notice. They were just gone. They'd leave that
disappear,
day.
Right.
And then it was making my life even way harder at that point, where I'm like,
yeah.
So I had to learn how to, unfortunately, soften it down, especially with guys.
Yep.
The girls I could be more direct with, and they would just be like, okay, like, and they would actually like learn and move on. But it was really weird. The guys were the worst ones. If I gave them constructive feedback, it was instant. Let me try to overtalk you and give you let me tell you actually what it was. And I'm like, no, like, just listen to what I'm trying to tell you, right?
Yeah.
But they never wanted to accept it. And there'd be times where I would just be like, look, like, I'm not trying to mess with you. I just need you to do it this way, because what you did is now costing me money or affecting the business. But they just, taking feedback is, it's hard for people, I think. They don't want to hear it. I don't know if it's because they got daddy issues, but, like...
Maybe so.
I mean, I got instant feedback from my dad all the time growing up.
Me too.
And
my dad
usually it's a little smack in the head.
He had, I told you guys earlier, my mom made, she made fishing poles.
Yeah.
Right? So we made poles, fiberglass, wrap, and hold it. So she made this one spinning rod for my dad, and it was probably, I don't know, 3 feet long.
Mm-hmm.
But it was the end of a spinning rod, and she made it like as thin as a switch would be for those who grew up in the country and grandma used to whip you with a switch. And man, let me tell you something. That thing, when you would hear it, it would be going nuts. And that was our instant feedback, right, growing up. But you know, my dad was very vocal, and he was very direct. And when I got into the kitchens into college, when I was doing hospitality school, afterwards when I worked for Caesars Entertainment, Harris Entertainment, where you got a lot of chefs who were highly trained, I mean, there's no time for me to be nice to you.
Mm-hmm.
So it was very direct. And I know whenever I got into running my own companies, I definitely took on that same persona and was very direct with people. I mean, we get on to folks, man. And then as like time goes on and you learn how to be a leader, and you learn that, hey, I can have the same results without being so, you know, I don't know, for lack of better terms, being a dick, right? People are going to work even harder for me. They're going to like you even more. They're going to stay around. They're going to show up the next day, like you said. You kind of find ways to go through that process and get the results. And it took me time, and I think it takes every great leader time to understand like what's the best, you know, combination of all of those things. But they all have the same thing in common: leading from passion, you know, leading attention to detail, holding people accountable. It's just how you do it, right?
Yeah.
And those things were good for us to learn.
A lot of people don't even realize a lot of times the boss man's also developing his own skills.
Correct.
You
Yeah,
know,
definitely.
Everyone like.
I was for sure.
Yeah, same with me. Like, it's funny how many times people are like, "Oh wow, like you really got your stuff together." I'm like, man, if you could only see behind the scenes, right? Or like, you know, when you're a young guy like in the military, you're like, "Oh wow, that NCO really knows what he's doing." And then you become the NCO, and you're like, that NCO had no idea what he was doing because I don't know what I'm doing. You know, like
right.
You always think people have their stuff together, and you don't realize it until you get in those positions, and you're like, oh, wow.
Well, look, you know, I mean, when we opened our first restaurant, I was 30. You know, and I mean, I'd been running multi-unit restaurants for a while, for multiple companies. But when it's yours and it's your family in debt, $1 million, it matters even more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you want it to A, be what you dreamt it up to be, and B, you want it to be successful so that you can reach that you know, American dream, if you will, at some point.
Yeah.
Whenever that is, you know. So you know, the level of intensity went to the roof. It was more like Game 7 of the World Series every second.
Yeah.
And over time, you realize maybe that's not the best way. And I think, like you said, like I was still growing as a leader. 30 years old. 30-year-old me versus 41-year-old me, very, very different.
Oh, yeah.
Same passion, same goals, same beliefs, same direction, but very different leadership style. And, you know, more education, more experience. And those are all the things that help people be, you know, part of that 1% to 4%. Like, you know, you have to be able to build a team, scale business, have people, you know, support your brands, but more importantly, like you as a leader, because, you know, you're not going to attract those other people that you want to have on your team if you're just known to be the tyrant.
Yeah,
or,
exactly.
You know, the guy who never listens to anyone, or the guy who's too good for anyone, or whatever. You know what I mean? So it's definitely a process.
Yeah.
For sure.
So to go back to your journey, so Crab Trap, did that, get done with high school, go to college, play baseball. Didn't go to college for restaurant, right?
First 2 years, no. Playing baseball, just did, you know, traditional first 2 years college stuff, business. Went to Florida State, School of Business over there has a million majors. I don't even know how many they got in there, like 60 majors to choose from within the School of Business, something like that. And I remember sitting with a counselor, and she was like reading off all these opportunities, like human resources, accounting, marketing. I'm sitting there like, boring. I definitely don't want to do that. Financial management of the firm, like, yeah, no way. So then she's like, oh, well, what do you like to do? It's like, oh, I love sports, She's like, I was like, oh, I used to work in restaurants. Oh, did you like that? And I was like, yeah, it was a blast. She's like, well, how did it come natural to you? I was like, yeah, it seemed like it. I mean, moved through all these positions, yada, yada. It's like, oh, well, you know, we have like one of the top 10 hospitality schools in the country, part of the business school. And I was like, wait, you can go to school for restaurants and hotels? She's like, yeah. It's like, sign me up. So that's how I got into that school.
Yeah.
And it was, went from struggling in some of like the boring business school classes to Dean's List, hospitality school.
Wow.
Everything was just easy. Like, it was natural. You know what I mean? Like, sometimes things just pop up on the page and they just make sense. Mm-hmm. And that's how all the studies were for me for hospitality. I was just engaged, you know? And we had classes that would be in the kitchen, and, you know, we do all the prep for the skyboxes at Florida State. The school's amazing. And it really prepares you properly, unlike some degrees do in school nowadays, as we have these crazy student debt conversations, right? But this school actually prepares you to go get a job and be successful and know what people are talking about, like, immediately.
Yeah.
And not just be like some fake la degree that you see all over the place, right? So it was great, man.
So you took that degree.
Did
they get you the job, or was it through connections you had?
I graduated college in 2004. And at that time, you know, kind of right before that first financial deal in 2008 where things changed up with the financial crisis or whatever, but hospitality program had their own job fair. And of course, business school has theirs as well. And a lot of schools do this, but we had, I think, 90 kids in our graduating hospitality class, and there was like 110 businesses there.
Oh, wow.
So it was like shooting fish in a barrel to get interviews.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You could basically pick and choose. They looked at your resume, and if you had any kind of charisma, they'd give you a shot. So did all those interviews and ended up working for Caesars Entertainment with casinos. And they placed you. So at the time, they had Harris has bought them out since then, but Caesars had what they called the Mid-South region, and it was Gulfport, Biloxi, Tunica, Mississippi, and I think it was one other place. But they ended up placing me for Tunica, Mississippi, which is just south of Memphis, Tennessee. And at the time, I was like, what the heck did I just get myself into? Literally grew up on the beach, on the water, living like the Destin beach life. You know, it's Florida State, Tallahassee, very, you know, just great. Tunica, Mississippi is like straight cotton fields, just south of Memphis. It is just brutal, man. Went there and graduating, obviously in the spring, getting there in the summer, it's like 106 degrees with like 0 wind. I mean, it was just the armpit, man. It was brutal. But, you know, I remember going up there and telling my dad, like, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to live up there. It's kind of bad, dude. And he was like, well, what do you mean? I was like, there's nothing there. He's like, that's exactly what you need, man. He's like, because you'll be able to focus 100% on what you're doing and why you're there, which is to learn the skills, you know, learn a new company, and just go to work, you know? So ended up doing it, and had some pretty good success. There was some turnover right when I got there. I started in June 21st, June 22nd. And they put me at the hotels, right? So the property has 3 hotels. One's connected to the casino, 2 are across the street. They've got pools, bars, whatever. So there's 9 food and beverage outlets that the hotel food and beverage team is responsible for, and then the casino has like steakhouses, all the restaurants. So we started on June 22nd, my first day. My general manager quits on July 3rd. And I remember the guy's name was Jarvis, man, real weird cat. And he was way older than me. I'm 21. Just turned 22. It's 20. Yeah, just turned 22 in April, right before I moved up there. And I remember him telling me, Tyler, I quit. And I was like, well, I'm not your boss, man. Like, you gotta talk to the food and beverage director, you know? He's like, well, I'm just letting you know because you're gonna be on your own, and I just wanted to give you a heads up. And I was like, well, man, like, come on, don't quit. You know, it's July 4th week. It's about to be busy and crazy. He's like, I can't take this anymore. He's like, this business is for people that care, and I don't care. And I was like, he goes, if you don't have passion, don't do this business. He gets his keys and he throws them at me. And I grab his keys. He's like, I'm out of here. He walks out.
Wow.
And I was like, I've only been working for like almost 14 days, you know. I called the director up, he's a young guy from Vegas. And I'm like, hey, Aaron, Vibus just quit, man. What do you mean? I'm like, he told me that you have to be passionate to work in this business. You have to care, and he don't care. Threw me his keys and he left. He's like, all right, well, what are you gonna do? I was like, go deliver all these deliveries, man. Like, cause we had to do like VIP amenities, which is basically if you were at a casino and you spend a bunch of money, you're a high roller player or whatever, you can request like certain things in your room, and we had like 150 check-ins of like everything from Jack Daniels and Red Skittles only to, I'm being serious when I say that, to flowers to birthdays, whatever. You know what I mean? And mind you, I never even stayed in a hotel room service my entire life before I got that job. We went to motels growing up. You know what I mean? Motel 6, Holiday Inn Express. Like, those were the places we stayed, like, traveling for sports or whatever. We never really stayed at a hotel with room service, and that was what I was in charge of. The only room service I'd ever done was during, like, a week stage at Four Seasons, where it was like an internship. I'd never been to room service, and now I'm, like, running 3 room services at 22 years old.
Wow.
So it kind of puts you in that spot where you just got to figure it out. You know what I mean? And the people that, and that's why I was saying, like, people that don't quit have just such a great chance of succeeding. And that's what it was. Like, literally just put my head down and learned everything I could learn. Tried to find out all the problems that all my employees and staff had been having under this other manager and just trying to fix them. I literally would meet the team and be like, hey, what do you not like? What do you not like? What do you not like? And I'm 22 years old. Mind you, all these people are 30, 40, 50 years old that are working for me. And just try to be a good listener and get stuff done. And I think that's the key, man. If you want to be successful, you want to be in charge, you got to be a go-getter. You got to be willing to listen. You got to be able to get stuff done. If you can't do those 3 things, you will never make it. You know? So that was what I did, man. And ended up moving over to the casino when I was the following year. Put me in charge of the buffet. So finally became a GM when I was 23, man.
Wow.
759 seats. $13 million a year restaurant.
What was the average age for a
4,000.
GM? What was the average age for a GM? Like something like
30,
that.
30.
So being 23 years
31,
old.
32. I was the youngest one they had.
Wow.
But my boss believed in me. You know what I mean? He was a younger guy too. He saw that I was just willing to do whatever it takes, and I think that's the key, right? So like, if you're a business owner, or if you work for a company, and you find those employees that are willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah.
They're smart. They're willing to take risks, even if they make mistakes. It's fine. You know, you got to take those people and put them on your team.
Yep.
And put them in your cabinet, because you want to grow those people and you want to grow with them. You know, and that was something I learned along the way too. And he did that for me, and I do that. I try to do that for as many people as I can. Challenge is you don't find a lot of those people. You know what I mean?
It's the hard part.
So
That's why it's hard to scale.
Exactly.
That's the hardest thing.
Yeah.
Like someone like Tim, good people I had, Hannah, people that work for me. I'm always like, if I could just get like 5 more of you, we could 5 times grow this business. But
sure,
I can't find people, the quality people, because they would treat the business as their own.
Exactly.
So they're basically just another version of me. And yeah.
And I heard Gary Vee was talking on a podcast one time, an interview or something, and he said, because I always struggled with this, like, man, like, why don't they care as much as I care? And he said, like, if you're a business owner, or if you're like the head cat in a company or whatever, and you expect the lower people to care as much as you care, you're just gonna die. You're gonna kill yourself. You're gonna like spin your wheels. It's just gonna drive you crazy.
Yeah.
And one of the people said, well, what do you do? And he goes, just continue to like dive into the process, continue to dive into the programs and all of the things that you need to get accomplished, and simplify it for those people so that the bottom person doesn't care as much as you do, but their job is so simplified and so processed, like has such a good process that they can pull it off to the same level as the guy that cares just as much. Got me thinking a lot, right? Because I mean, there's been many times where I go in the dish pit, stuff stacked all over the place. I'm like, why can't we just put the square plate on the square plate? You know what I mean? Like, how hard is that? But guess what? If you like literally build compartments, it happens every time. Like, if you simplify it to the point that it's like, you know, like your kid could do it, chances are success is pretty high, right? So that can help you scale when you're building businesses, or you're building like, you know, you're trying to, like, if you're like in a franchise situation or you're building a company, it's like the email, like the paperwork goes to the same spot every time. Just have those processes in place, because it'll definitely help you get there. You know, I had a chef in hospitality school. He told me we had to put on a dinner for 100 people as part of your grade, and like your classmates were your employees. And he told me when I was writing the recipes, he goes, "Look, man, don't make them so complicated." I'm like, It's not that complicated. He's like, yeah, but you have to make it like a 5-year-old can read it. And so like, if it says, grab bus tub, fill lemon, fill to top with lemons, take lemons, put on table, grab peeler, peel lemons till there's no yellow left. If you have to make it that simple, do it, because it's less problems you're going to have and less questions you're going to get. And we've kind of stick to that all the time. You know, even with my chef Orion and my guys now, they write recipes. When I look at the procedures, I'll be like, look, man, you left a lot of gray area right there, bro. You know, and you can't leave that gray area and then be mad that it didn't get done the way you want it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the key. A lot of things, you know, I mean, depending on what it is you're doing, but for us, that's helped things stay more consistent.
Yeah.
And you know, the challenge with, it's a little bit different with food than a lot of businesses because not every tomato tastes the same. You know, ripeness levels change, whatever, right? So some of it is going to be interpretation, but if you have that process in place, the interpretation window is a lot smaller. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So that works for us.
So you went from being that GM there. What was the next step after that? Same company or?
Yeah, same company. So GM was Caesars, and then Harris bought us out. Mm-hmm. $4 billion.
Oh wow.
$2 billion in stock, $2 billion cash. So we switched over, which was cool because I got to be a part of the 2 largest casino companies the world's ever seen at the time. MGM, some of those other ones might be bigger now, but you know, kind of coming together. 2 completely different philosophies, but both really successful at what they do, and I'm thankful for that time. At the time, I was not thankful for it, but now I am, because it's really helped, you know, shape who I am as a manager and a leader and things like that. But Caesars was kind of like, I mean, for those of you guys who've been to Caesars Palace or whatever, I mean, you see it's insane, right? It's huge, it's immaculate,
yeah.
Attention to details.
Good buffet.
Yeah, it's
nuts,
a
really
right?
good buffet.
So, where Caesars was like, you know, professional, intentional, like suit and tie every day, mm-hmm. even in food and beverage at the sports bar, suit and tie, doesn't matter. If you're a manager, you're a leader, suit and tie. And that's just kind of how we rolled, you know. Everything was important. We took care of everything at a very high level. And then when Harris came in, they were more like pro-employee. So people call it like, they called it, you know, you drink the purple Kool-Aid, which their colors were purple. So like once you're like drink that Kool-Aid, you turn into like this employee who's like so enthusiastic about taking care of the guests that it's okay to be a little sloppy. Because the guest experience is all that really matters, mm-hmm. not necessarily how you look, how you do certain things. Still super successful company, but really showed me and taught me a lot about, you know, having really engaged employees and what the results can be. So I think our company now is kind of like a combination of that, and it works out really good for us. Mm-hmm. Because if you're too detail oriented and you're so strict and tight, then it's going to be hard to get employees, for one, but for two, like, depending on the client, it may not work, right? And if you're so like pro-employee that they're running an asylum, then you may not be able to keep the standards that you want, right? So you kind of have to have a mix. And mm-hmm. When I was there running that buffet, we were doing tons of money. 2005 happens, Katrina hits New Orleans.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Everything's closed, right? New Orleans closed, golf course closed. Tunica becomes the busiest casino anywhere other than Vegas. Like that market, right? So we went insane. So we just got really good experience at like high volume and like how to deal with those types of situations, and it was cool, man. Started running multiple restaurants for them. I was running the sports bar, running the cafe, running the buffet, nightclub. Worked with the beverage director, Chris Clark, amazing dude. Taught me a lot about wine, spirits, cocktails. Helped him do stuff with the steakhouse, the fine dining Italian. Met my current chef, Orion, there at the time, who works for us now, but really just got a chance to start doing like multi restaurant management and like getting more specialized in like not only how the restaurant functions to be profitable, but like, you know, menu development and cocktail and wine menu and flavors and profiles and concept and a lot of that type of stuff. So
this is where you really kind of learn
the
I guess behind the scenes of the restaurant business, like actually running the restaurant business.
Yeah, it's 2004. That was 2004 to 2008. I did that for about 4 years, and I got to do probably like 9 concepts in 4 years.
Oh wow!
Plus the food and beverage VIP stuff that I was doing prior. So probably closer to like 10 or 12. It comes like stylistically. So,
I'd imagine you're
John,
probably.
can I take a pee?
Oh yeah, let's take a break.
Pause? Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
let's pause it. Let's go take a pee.
I gotta take a pee.
Yeah.
Stop water before I come in.
All right, back on from our little restroom break.
Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna start to kind of wrap this up. I didn't realize we've been going for like an hour and 45 minutes, almost
Can
2
you
hours.
imagine if we had bourbon?
Oh,
Like we would totally have got lost for.
that's what we'll do in the next
We
episode.
should.
Because I want you to come back after I get back from the little European trip we're doing. And I feel like we kind of got a good story established with you. And next time, I really want to get more in depth to like, okay, at what point was it where you're like opening up the restaurant? I'm leaving my comfortable, good job with the casinos because you took a big risk doing that.
Yeah.
And then took another big risk like 12 months later, opened up another restaurant. And that's where I really want to get into like the restaurant business of that.
Absolutely.
Then also the real estate side of it because
Yeah.
when you bought Cuvée.
I own a holding company now, man. I'm big time.
Yeah. You got the holding company.
That's right.
You're not just a restaurant guy. You got the real estate knowledge. I mean, that's a good primetime commercial spot there. So that's the kind of stuff I want to get to in the future. And we'll definitely do it with bourbon in there. But
Yeah, actually, we could even do it with tequila because we just bought our first barrel of tequila
did you?
at East Pass Seafood and Oyster House that was aged in Buffalo Trace barrels.
Oh,
So maybe I'll bring a bottle next time.
Let's do the
We'll
tequila.
sip on that.
the tequila would be good.
I haven't even had it yet. It's supposed to be pretty good. We'll see.
Yeah.
It's Corazon. It's an añejo.
Oh,
So it
nice.
should be delicious over an ice cube.
We're definitely going to do that. Okay, so to end this up, let's say I'm a young guy, I'm a great chef, and I want to go into the restaurant industry. What would be a few good words of advice to go into that?
Yeah, so a couple things. If you know, get a job and learn on somebody else's dime is a very, very good thing to do. Get a job and learn in the same space that you want to go into and master it. And what I mean by that is if you want to be a fine dining chef, don't go get a job at a casual restaurant and then cook there for a couple of years and be like, all right, I'm ready to be the chef of the fine dining restaurant, right? Go work for somebody that's in a similar concept to what you want to do, so that you can see what the challenges that restaurant goes through, because those challenges are going to help prepare you for the ones that you're going to endure whenever you get to want to open up your own store, etc. Right? So really get into the space and try to understand it, so that you can be more prepared for the adversity when it comes, because it's coming. You can't get into any business that you're going to start up and not have adversity. It's impossible. Won't happen, right? Whether it's going to be an oil spill that happened in 2010 in Destin, it's going to be a COVID 2020, it's going to be whatever, right? You're going to face it at some point. So learn in the space that you want to be in so that you can start to understand it, and then you'll be more prepared for it when you get into it. That would be my advice for the young chef just coming out of school. You're really talented, you just graduated school, but you haven't worked in the space a long time, or you haven't done it long enough. Don't be going to look for a loan to start your first restaurant, because you're going to have a big time trials and tribulations that you could have already saved all that trouble, aka money in the real world, and already went through some of that maybe you won't make those same mistakes.
Yeah.
Whenever it's your turn and your time and when you're ready to open those restaurants.
Because it's not just cooking, it's also the businessman in you.
Yeah.
So
Well, yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Right. So,
I got a friend that's a doctor. He always says, doctors are good doctors. We're terrible business people, and you got to learn how to do both. You're not just being the doctor anymore.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to do something successfully that you understand.
Yeah.
So if you're a chef and you know how to make just phenomenal sauces and break down proteins and put amazing flavors on the plate, make sure you also understand how to run payroll, how to pay your vendors, how to pass health inspections, how to hire and fire employees without getting yourself in legal trouble, right? How to run social media, there's a lot of other aspects that go into this business that if you want to have success, it's not just about making good food. Mm-hmm. Because I can give you unlimited budget, you could probably make me some amazing food, right? Or if I say, okay, you've got to run X% costs, you're going to have to run this types of margins so that you can actually pay yourself. It's a big difference. It's a big difference. And I think that's what a lot of restaurants, young restaurateurs and young chefs that get into the game. One of the reasons that they fail, they make a lot of successful. They can make good food, delicious food, and have a cool concept, but the numbers don't work. And as my awesome business partner Chris always says, man, he's a math. That's his thing. He goes, numbers don't lie, and if they don't work, you don't get paid. He's like, there's been a lot of opportunities that we've had over the last 5 years that we've passed on because the numbers didn't work.
Yeah.
So if the numbers don't work, just wait and find a place or make sure that you take over a place that the numbers will work.
Yeah. Well, wise words there from one of Destin's serial restaurant entrepreneurs, probably one of the best ones out there. I mean, really.
Appreciate that, man.
So hopefully you will come back after this. We'll do the tequila one day and talk for hours more. Because, I mean, you're one of my best friends. I can just sit here and talk to you like we're just normal conversation, right?
Yeah.
So this is an easy conversation. But, yeah, I guess that is it.
I do want to say,
oh, yeah.
John, out of all people that I thought I would have ever met in the restaurant, I never thought that it would be John and Riz who got me in 2-week notice to the French Laundry. It's like a 6 month to 8 months, sometimes a year wait. And John and their connections and Riz and her friend luckily worked there as an intern.
That was all
he was
Riz's
like, "Hey,
friend.
we're gonna go eat at some restaurant called like the Laundry," and I was like, "Would that be the French Laundry?" Yeah, that's the name. We have to go at 10 o'clock. Is that cool? I'm like, "Man, I'll go at midnight. We're going." And that was a cool experience. We had a good time over there.
Not to keep this going, I got to tell that story real quick. So I'm in the group text with Tyler and his wife and Riz, and I'm catching bits and pieces of it about going to French Laundry. I didn't realize this was a restaurant, and I'm just like, why are we going to a laundromat? Like, what is so unique about a French laundromat? And I really didn't know until, I don't know if I asked Riz or I asked you or something. I'm like, oh, this is a restaurant called the French Laundry. I was just so confused why we were spending so much time in this text group about the French Laundry. But that was a cool experience. That was an amazing experience. I mean, that's one of those lifelong memories that you cherish forever. And we got some really cool photos out of that.
We did.
We got some really good stuff. I can't believe that was five years ago.
Crazy, man.
Time flies. That is wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Same
wild.
dudes, though.
Yeah, same dudes.
Just a little more successful.
Maybe a little more gray. I don't know. I think I got a couple. couple coming on the side.
You're using just for men over there. So
okay, well, dude, appreciate you coming on. I'm gonna have you come back in the future, and that's a wrap for episode 10 with Tyler Jarvis.
You got it, man. Thank you.
Thanks, dude.
You got it, brother.